welcome to We Design People. We are here to design people and also design ourselves from the closest space in our hearts. And we want all of you to be your own kind of creative. I think that is the purpose of this initiative that I've started. And we've run workshops across the world. And we want to really empower everyone to explore their creative sides, to use it as a skill and as a mindset also. So it's not just I think a lot of times we forget that soft skills are really important as creatives. And the why I'm using the word creatives is because for me, the word designer sometimes it feels like it makes it inaccessible for us to communicate what we do to people or do with people. So creatives is a better word because I think people can relate to that. So I want to help drive imagination, introspection. How do you sit with yourself and spend a little bit more time knowing what you really want to do and why you want to do something? And also collaboration, because I think as a creative or as a designer, it's so important to collaborate with people and create for better impact. Our journey so far, we've gone crazy. We went crazy last year. We did 3 workshops in San Francisco, and 2 in London, where we were trying to explore and bring out the creativity in people. And the one we did in London was at the Royal College of Art. So that was really fun because we did it with about 60 service design students. We've done virtual gatherings as well, virtual workshops on get creative with your alter ego. I won't share too much about that because that's an ongoing workshop that we keep doing and it's super, super exciting. And we'd love for you to come and attend some of those as well. Okay.
All right. Thank you. I am Holly. I'm a service designer. I'm based near London in the UK. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm here to talk to you about designing for love. So, in our world that is increasingly less connected, swipe left, swipe right, check in, self check-ins, all that sort of stuff. I strongly believe that the human connection between us all is needs to be designed in more basically. So I'm going to walk you through the work that I've done, a framework for human connection you can take away with, and share some kind of tools and experiences actually that you can then apply in your own work. So this is essentially relational design kind of 101, and it can be applied really well within culture design and digital transformation scenarios as well. So next slide, let's see. Got a couple of screens going on, so hopefully we won't have too many tech difficulties, but some questions that you might have that I'm going to answer, and we've also got space for Q&A right at the end. So if you can hold back any major questions till then, or pop them in the chat, and we'll come to that later. I'm going to talk to you about, why do we want to design for love, where I'm coming from within that space, and how my experience has led me here. Who are Deepr, which is the relational design studio I work with, and then I'll introduce you to the 5 conditions for human connection. And we'll end with a sort of an experience where we get to try it and try how it feels to be more connected as humans before we go into the Q&A. And actually the next I've got an activity for you right now that's just going to increase our presence together, and it's going to hopefully help us feel a little bit more human connection. So what I'm going to talk you through here is something called hot mugs. It's a method I developed with Matt from Deepr back in, it was kind of pandemic era, so it was 2020. And Radhika, who's hosting us from We Design People, suggested you might want to bring like a hot drink with you. And so I'm going to encourage you to hold your hot drink with both hands. And if you haven't got a hot drink, then a warm kind of self handhold like this does exactly the same trick. So I'm going to stop sharing and so that we can kind of actually have a look around who's in the room. And we're going to just take 20 seconds in silence to look around the room, see who's there, feel the kind of warmth from the mug or your hands, and feel the warmth from each other. And feel free to, take some deep breaths or do whatever you want to do that helps you feel comfortable and relaxed. So you might want to stretch, you might want to close your eyes, you might want to smile, however you fancy being right now. Let's go for it. If I can ask anyone that can to turn your videos on, it really helps. So you can do this, obviously, it's better sort of in person, but particularly digitally, it really helps if we can actually see your faces right now rather than your static profiles or your names. So any more videos that could be switched on, I appreciate that. Let's go. Okay, I'll close us there just because there's not so many of us with video on. And I'll ping us back into the slide share. No worries, those that can't turn your video on. I know some people are driving, some people are snacking. Like it's all good. Just show up however you want to show up. Let's go back into our slides. And just kind of letting you know some of the benefits of that hot mugs activity is that we get to feel like a sense of warmth, literally from holding the warm mug or your hands, but also figuratively because this method has a bit of a superpower within our method bank, which I'll share later. So research has shown that if you hold a warm mug in a social interaction, it basically generates feelings of trust and warmth towards the others there. On video, great to obviously have your video on. If you're on the phone, then actually like silence is really golden. And as I mentioned, yeah, no hot mug, no problem. Self warm hold, just any kind of physical touch. And even my favorite, which is the self hug, which I do quite a lot. It's really going to regulate your nervous system. Um, the actual method card I'm just flashing up here is, look, you can see the kind of design of the method cards we did for the human connection methods. It gives you a sense of whether you can start it straight away. It has like a dials on how much of the 5 human connections. So we're really high up on presence and whole self, and talks through the benefits, the top tips, and the superpower if there is one. So now into the kind of the bulk of the talk. So I will be talking a lot. Please pop anything in the chat, which Radhika can kind of monitor, and we'll be doing Q&A at the end. So I'm here to talk to you about love. It's interesting, you go into a boardroom anytime, but certainly these days, and you say, I want to talk to you about love, you get an initial reaction, which is kind of recoil often and shyness, but actually it quickly cuts through any of the sort of emotions felt and people understand, right? Because there are only 2 emotions, according to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross here. She's a Swiss American psychiatrist, the author of On Death and Dying, which was a best-selling international book. And yeah, she talks about there only being love and fear. And so I'm pretty sure that we're all designing for love as designers. I mean, the full quote here from Elizabeth is just there on the right, but I think I know in my heart of hearts that no one is in this room is designing for fear. I hope you probably wouldn't be here, or if you are designing from a place of fear, maybe that's also a reason that you're here because you want to learn how to switch that up. So just talking about me a little bit so you can kind of understand my premise. I found my feet in the world sort of doing user research out on the street with a wayfinding company called AIG, so Apply Information Group. We made a lot of the street signage and the pedestrian signage for a lot of cities. And it was through that I recognized my true sort of purpose of helping people through design. I'd originally trained as a graphic designer, and I felt that there was a bit of a ceiling there, and I also wasn't that good at like the detail. I was a bit more kind of broad brush and a bit more of a generalist. So I realized that actually I wanted to start with research and understanding people, their needs, their behaviors, and ultimate sort of motivations. And talking through my kind of work history through then, I left AIG and I tried some more graphic design because I was like, I've done a BA in this stuff, 3 years of my life was dedicated to it. I shouldn't just throw it away. But it really wasn't for me. This one was Studio Myerscough, doing really crazy, funky shit. But yeah, it wasn't for me. So I actually did a service design MA, and really kind of a few others here are graduates from that same program. And it was there that I really focused in on the social stuff, education, health, working with communities. And after I left that 2-year course, I did a lot of freelance with startups. So bringing kind of service design to a tech startup, health tech startup. I was a research associate at the Helen Hamlin Centre for Design, where I worked with the Age and Ability Lab. I moved to San Francisco and started designing learning experience for students, teaching them design thinking. So that was as a teaching fellow at the Stanford D School. And I left that, came back to the UK, and I worked with Design Thinkers Academy. That's where I know Amanda from. So they basically teach design thinking, co-creation, facilitation to adults, primarily non-designers. I was the design lead at their consultancy, which was DK&A, on many of their service design projects. And I then freelanced and I did a couple of gigs with Google as a freelancer. I ran like my biggest workshop ever, which was about, yeah, 60 people. Actually, I've done a bigger one since then, but still, human connection is quite hard when you're like up front with a microphone and you've got 60 people you're talking to, you've got the lights on you and everything. But that was at the Google Design Sprint Conference in Colorado, and that was actually about how to invite people to experience like team-wide vulnerability and build trust. And just before the pandemic hit, I formed a partnership with Matthew McStravick. His mug face is there, and we formed Deepr. So Deepr is a relational design studio who operate kind of at this convergence between people and design. And we strongly believe that at the center of every design problem, there's actually a human relationship, and that's our premise. So we use a relationships first approach, and I'll dig into that later. You'll kind of see that throughout all of our work. Design thinking, of course, which basically service design is design thinking applied, as Clive Grenier would say, as I quote him, and also psychotechnologies to solve 21st century problems. Psychotechnologies, I'm not going to be going too much into today, but it's things like circling, and transformational connection, basically bringing meditation into the we space, and allowing for kind of dream space thinking and visioning. So we basically like to spend about, 50% more of our time on the interactions between people, whether that's staff, teams, customers, rather than the actual technical aspects of any project. Why? Why do we design for human connection? Well, many of you know, or will have heard of the loneliness epidemic. So this actually, I think, was from 2006 or 16, these stats. So they're, old now in today's terms. But you can see just from some of these icons here, we've got over 9 million adults, often or always lonely. This was a study from the British Red Cross. There's rates of suicide are up. There's various stats here that I don't need to dig into, but we basically want to target loneliness. And I wanted to point to something called the village effect, which was a study in Sardinia by Susan Pinker. She looked at all the indicators over about a 10-year period, all the indicators that people would live over 100, and become centenarians. So it wasn't giving up smoking, it wasn't giving up drinking or eating healthily, or not even like the meaningful connections people had with their closest loved ones. It was actually the frequency in which they had small but meaningful interactions with their weak tie relations. So people like the postman, the local barista at the coffee shop, their neighbours, like waving to someone at the pedestrian crossing. That was the biggest indicator of a long life. So it shows us how the importance of face-to-face contact in our era of kind of disbanded families and virtual connections, is so important. And, to kind of the crux of the problem, as I mentioned right up front, like so many of our services, digital and physical, are designing out human connection. So it's known in the service design world as creating frictionless services, and basically getting rid of people. So you'll go to any of the London Tube stations these days, and they've taken out the ticket offices and replaced with machines. Now, especially with the rise of AI, services are now designed to reduce human connection opportunities, what you might see referred to as HCO later in this talk. Now, there's some examples of businesses who are actually doing a lot more for human connection, who we like to hold up as the kind of exemplars. So we've got like things like Blah Blah Car, who basically, you know, lift sharing, that kind of talks to itself. But in their feedback after the rides with each other, one of their greatest criteria is chattiness. So how chatty was your driver and with the other people in your ride? If you're more chatty, you basically get a higher rating. So it's rewarding that small, meaningful human connection. You've got Bertzog down in the bottom left. They are a model of care, a social enterprise developed in the Netherlands in 2006. And it involves small nursing teams who provide a range of kind of personal social care in people's homes. And the fact that actually the Bertzog teams are really small, often consisting of about 4 to 12 caregivers, mean they can really focus on their interactions with their patients. And amongst other things like sort of autonomy and in the empowerment they give their caregivers, it is really that small team that gives them the opportunity to connect with their patients and builds a sense of community and trust. You've got Echo in the top right, so that's still going. It was founded by Matt McStravick, the co-founder of Deepr, and it's a platform for trading skills and services, and it uses time as currency. And it was found that people who developed relationships, well, they did develop relationships to the point where it changed the way that they viewed financial transactions. So more like being with others rather than just getting from others. And it was actually one of the things that led to the genesis of Deepr. So I'll end with Airbnb, who we all know, a huge global successful firm, and they do all that they can to promote human connection within their service experience. It could easily be a contactless one, but the real prime example of that is their like Airbnb experiences that they launched quite a few years back, where it took the experience to a new level. So you could choose to go and stay in LA and play the drums with like a local drummer in their house. It wasn't so much about playing the drums, it's about spending time with a local. And as we all know, they're a multi-billion-dollar business, so they've done well with that. So back to our work, why are we doing this? Well, we have kind of proven with all of our work now that when people come together with meaningful connection, they can carry out whatever task they have at hand to the very best of their ability. They take real great care of the experience of the other. They're more flexible when it comes to changes in their expectations or problems in the process. So if you haven't focused on the relationships between people in a service, then a problem or a glitch comes up, often a technical one, and people are like, oh, not my monkey, not my circus. They kind of step back and they're not involved. If you have focused on the relationships, people are more open to step up and work together to find the solution collaboratively. And then finally, ultimately, the kind of holistic outcome here is about people experiencing feelings of belonging, of well-being. And we all know the positive effect that can have kind of throughout our lives. And they want to repeat the activity. So we're talking service design, you're talking repeat customers. That's what we want to design in. Um, There's a bigger why here, which is about fostering a bit of a mindset shift towards more we and less me. So providing an experience of greater human connection can create this mindset shift from me to we. Okay, lots of talking. I'm about half an hour in, so a bit of a kind of recap on what you've heard so far. So, small, regular human connection is vital to physical and mental health. Services, including digital ones, are generally designing out HCO. They're reducing human connection opportunities. If you design for more and higher HCO, the results it results in more efficient and resilient services, as well as happier and more fulfilled people. And we all want that, right? And then providing an experience of greater human connection can create those small mindset shifts, more towards we and less from me. So you might be wondering, okay, where's all this coming from? Like, where's the proof, the evidence? How did you even build the stuff that I'm about to show you? So I'm going to walk you through that. So the design work actually came, as I mentioned, Matt founded and ran Echo for about 5 years. And after he did that, he did a Claw Fellowship. And in that, he developed this paper, which we can share the link with you now, Radhika, or if you want to at the end, and you can look through later. But it's basically like the genesis of Deepr. It was a paper called Deepr Everyday Connection. It talks in a lot of detail about everything that I've just mentioned. And I was a sort of editor and an advisor on that paper. And so I then joined with Matt at Deepr, and we researched and developed and tested a kind of concept of human connection with about 60 organizations. So we were commissioned initially by Catalyst just before the pandemic hit. It was January 2020. And they asked us to investigate human connection and its effect on culture and services. And so we did a lot of research primarily with non-profit organizations and charities, organizations in the third sector. And we identified 40 methods for developing human connection opportunities. Now, the public sector during the pandemic, literally their services, their physical services had been switched off overnight, and suddenly they were running everything through video conferencing. And so they had to figure out how could they build in those moments after, say, they were offering a legal service, and actually it's about bringing people together. But it was really a lot of the value was in that like tea and biscuits that you had after the meeting or after the kind of consultation. How could they build that in now that we were all on Zoom and getting Zoom burnout and fatigue, and obviously the technical issues that so many people had with kind of upskilling in any kind of digital service. So we asked them what they did before the pandemic and what they were doing afterwards. We mapped it all, we codified it, and we developed we realized that in that synthesis and theming it all out, that it created it fit broadly into about 5 categories. And here they are. So these we're calling, the right conditions for human connection. So we've got presence, equality, accountability, autonomy, and whole self. Now, I'm going to walk through what each of these are. And just to let you know, the only one that has shifted in what we're talking 5 years since we created this, is just the name of whole self, which we would probably now call psychological safety, which is a term that's maybe also a little bit more well known. So, first of all, presence, ultimately, so that people are engaged and attentive. And that hot mugs method I ran at the beginning was an attempt at raising the presence within this room. So much of how we connect and interact is actually quite automatic, but automatic behaviors don't really foster connection. So maintaining people's attention where there's an opportunity for connection is really essential. And one way actually of doing this that you can take away is basically keeping interactions just really fresh and really new. So even like designing your invites for example, in us designing our invites for this talk, literally a few hours ago, I was like, oh, we should change the waiting room of the Zoom so that it's not just generic, it's actually saying who we are and what we're doing. You notice as you came in, for the majority of y'all, we tried to mention your name and welcome you personally, so that you felt seen and you felt heard. So there are a couple you can take away, and keeping those interactions kind of fresh and new comes from like Daniel Kahneman, his work that describes the system 2 function of the brain. And system two is like a way of describing the manual function of the prefrontal cortex, that when we need to use that to figure out when something is new. And so that just ups our presence and our attention. Yeah, so newness is a level for presence. The next condition is equality, so that people experience minimal power imbalance. Building and acknowledging equality creates an even footing for connection. So this might mean quite simply that we're using really inclusive language with any of our communications or in our face-to-face or digital interactions. Or it might mean that we're weaving reciprocity into the ways that we interact with people that use, say, your website or your web tools. So basically, if you're ever asking for something, maybe you're asking someone to complete a survey or you're asking for some feedback, always give them something first. And it works both ways, right? So if you ask for something from someone, ask for something in return, give them something in return. And if they're asking you, then they should be giving you something. So in order to achieve this, we have to acknowledge the differences between us. Like that's kind of the baseline for this equality piece. The next third condition for human connection is accountability. So this is that people feel really invested in a two-way relationship. So reciprocity is key there. And this is about the fact that connection is a two-way street. So we should design our services so that there is as much for people to gain, for people in kind of taking care of that relationship between us. So we can do that by using real names and real photos online, so not avatars or emojis. We can build in two-way feedback into our processes so that we give feedback and people give feedback to us as well. We all need to have skin in the game and raise our accountability for people to show up. The fourth condition is autonomy. So this is basically so people have agency or choice. We must engage people to like think and to decide and act for themselves, right? And have that kind of solidarity and that self-efficacy in terms of what we do together and how we do it. So one way to achieve this is like consider handing over responsibility of an aspect of your service that you're designing or that you work with to the members of your community. What might that look like? What sort of training would they need? What kind of support? And ultimately, like design yourself out of it. Um, Basically, give ownership. Because you don't want people to be a passive member of the community, and that applies to team cultures as well. You don't want passive members of your team, and you need them to be actively engaged in what's happening. And so designing in more autonomy is a really good way of doing that. Okay, finally, whole self, as I said, could shift this to psychological safety. So this is so that people can be safe in fully expressing who they are. Now, the more that we're able to bring our vulnerable whole selves to any kind of interaction, digital or physical, as both the provider but also the receiver, the more likely we're able to build trust and then connection and then relational well-being. So um, vulnerability is a bit of a paradox. I won't bang on too much about it now. I'd just say look up Brené Brown. Vulnerability is a superpower. It's also really hard to kind of step into your vulnerability and to be in it, especially in any kind of difficult or toxic work culture. However, it's powerful. Um, and then one of the kind of safest, like very clearly boundaried way that we do this when we're meeting in groups is doing something we call a whole person check-in at the beginning of any interaction. So we don't talk about the work. First of all, we talk about ourselves, how we are, what our week's been like, how we're showing up that day. I find it is literally a game changer if I can show up, say, in a meeting with Matt and say, you know what, this has just happened for me. I just received this text from my sister. She's really angry about this or whatever else. Like that is sitting in me as we go into this work. And it just lets him know where I'm coming from and maybe some of the kind of caveats, therefore, that is going to be around the way that I'm interacting and that I'm showing up. And a lovely little kind of free tool that I can give you is when you're doing a check-in, especially digitally, but in person as well, is something we call three emojis. So you basically say, right, I'm going to share with everyone what my most frequently used emojis are on WhatsApp or whatever channel you use most. And you can all get out your phones, you can go on the frequently used bit of WhatsApp or your text message and your emojis. And I'm often like, okay, the poo emoji is on there for me. I've got a toddler who's with potty training, and there's a lot of poo around, so I'm putting that in a lot of text messages. There's often a lot of hearts, smiley faces, prayer hands, etc. So what's great about that is that you can share as little or as much as you like. I tend to wear my heart on my sleeve. I share it all. I'm very kind of open and vulnerable, sometimes to my detriment, but I find, it works for me and it works for others. Or you can just say, okay, I've got the heart, the smiley face, and the thumbs up, and just leave it at that. People can take as much or as little from that as they want. So all of these five human connection conditions, they act as a bit of a dynamo. And the idea is that you don't like build all five into every single interaction in a service or an experience. You kind of sprinkle them a little bit like a magical fairy dust. You sprinkle them throughout an experience. So one of our tools is a kind of service blueprint, but with designing those five conditions in, and you can see how they impact different elements of the service. So this is what the methods look like in our toolkit. We've got basically them all split up into the five conditions, and they're different in every instance that we work. Okay, some of them cross over. Sometimes we just reuse the toolkit. Sometimes we're co-creating bespoke toolkits with clients and bespoke methods. So we're continually evolving and growing and learning as well. I mentioned the hot mugs one, but just to kind of show it again, so you see one a little bit bigger. You've got the title, the description, how easy it is to start straight away, or whether it needs some preparation. And that can kind of indicate if people need a bit of a runway designed into going into a method like this. So if the dot was further into more preparation, then people are going to need some kind of expectation management and preview before you just kind of launch into it. Then you've got the conditions as a slider, the benefits, the top tips, and the superpower. And of course, we're always asking for feedback, so there's a link there. There are some methods that are single purpose. So yeah, as that kind of says, they're small and have a specific application. So show the room. I never blur my background. I let people have a little into my life. They can see the art. They can see people walking behind me. They just have a little bit more view of who I am. Um, Enjoy the silence is this one in the middle. So yeah, that's about kind of creating spaces for people to be together. It's often called body doubling. You're working together, but not necessarily doing things together, but you're just creating that autonomy and that presence. And who's in the room? I did that at the beginning. So I said people's names as you entered the room to acknowledge and validate that you were showing up. And then some examples of some strategic methods that have, yeah, a kind of wider, more strategic application and have greater impact on the way that teams form and maintain like their bond together as humans. So reciprocity, I've mentioned, building in kind of two-way feedback or two-way giving of things. Radical transparency. So this is kind of exploring ways we can be unusually open and honest. So in any of our meetings that Matt and I run online, we don't direct message each other privately in the Zoom chat or on WhatsApp. We just unmute ourselves and say, Matt, this is going wrong, or I'm thinking this, or should we leave this slide, or whatever else? Should we move on? And it just shows people that actually we are open, we can admit our mistakes, we can put our hands up, and we're not shy to do that. And lastly, mirroring. So it's a really simple technique of mirroring back verbatim what somebody says. And that's actually the activity that I'm going to run with you in a few minutes in some breakout rooms. Finally, you've got like bottom up methods. So you'll probably be familiar with the concept of bottom up and top down. So a lot of the methods are top down. We can engage in them consciously. We experience the conditions as we do so. But other methods are what's known as bottom up. So they kind of tap into our central nervous system, and they kind of um yeah, they bypass our front end and our executive function, and they develop feelings of connection. So the examples I have are the hot mugs that I ran earlier, synchronous activity. So this came from like a charity who are like, oh yeah, we like when we all clap together at the end of like some good performance or whatever it was, we just like feel like, you know, real experiences of well-being. And we kind of found actually there was a pattern of that happening, whether you're reciting something together, you're singing, you're moving together, you're doing the same stretch. That synchronous activity was really powerful. And then engaging with eye contact. So that can be quite difficult to do, right, on a Zoom, but you might want to look up circling or what's known as transformational connection, and basically, yeah, kind of optimizing any services to not only build humans in, but building eye contact is just a very powerful way to really tap into our true selves. So yeah, that's basically the framework. And in a session that we're going to be running later on, TBC to be announced the date, but we're going to be actually running through a guide of the simple steps that you can do to design human connection. I've given you a bunch already, right? But this actually involves a lot of templates that you can download and kind of start working with your teams instantly. It includes all of the methods, and then 10 principles, because at the end of this work, just like when you write a book, you don't actually do the title till the end. At the end of this work, we kind of evolved or created 10 principles that came out of the work that held it all together. And I will share those with you shortly, or a few of those anyway. So again, quick pause from me. We've got 15 minutes left. I always knew we were going to go over time, but just to recap, to achieve human connection opportunities, we look to reduce separation between people in any given instance. The conditions are presence, equality, autonomy, accountability, and whole self. There's a framework to guide you, including 40 methods to play with. Try sprinkling the 5 conditions across your services, your experiences, your team cultures, and try paying 50% more attention to the relational contact rather than the technical touch points. I'm going to end with some golden rules before we go into our activity. So, reduce separation. When considering each element of your service or your team culture, ask yourself, will this bring us closer together or further apart? The next one's reciprocity. So when you ask for something, always give something back. When you provide something, you are then allowed to ask for something back. And enable your beneficiaries, your users, your patients, or whoever you want to call them, your people, to provide value to you. So ask for help, give them roles. Finally, go fast and go slow. So this is kind of alluding back to that thing I said about frictionless. Okay, so actually we like to reframe creating frictionless services. We like to kind of design in positive friction or healthy friction. So when there is little opportunity for human connection, then it's fine to go fast, okay? It's fine to make it friction free. Otherwise, everything we're designing would get really slow, okay? And people would drop out. It's fine to go fast when there's not a lot of opportunity for human connection. But where there is this opportunity, then that's your chance to really go slow and create some friendly fiction in there, friendly friction. And, you know, if you look at your service and you're like, oh God, yeah, it's really seamless and streamlined and bang, 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 and we get people through in 3.2 seconds, just start to pause and say, hang on, where can we build in that human connection? Where can we go a little bit slower and think about the benefits that that's going to bring? Okay, so the last one that we're going to try is about listening and mirroring. So really rarely are we like truly heard. And this is basically about listening and playing back what you've heard, and it inspires trust and belonging and enables this kind of element of whole self. It feels really rich and special when you feel heard. And this example of Eliza is a little computer program that IBM created, which was basically a therapist. And it repeated back what anyone typed into it. So if you typed, I've had a bad day, it just writes back to you, so you've had a bad day. And even the people working with Eliza became really enamored with her and basically wanted to spend time with her. So this is just an invitation. Don't be shy to mirror and reflect back. It's really effective in relationship building. So to try it, we're going to go into a mirroring activity. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms, and I'm going to, they're just going to be pairs. So you're going to be paired with someone you don't know. And all you have to do is say hi and then decide who is partner one and who is partner two. And then go straight into this activity. So, partner one, I want you to like remember a really positive experience that you had recently. So it might come straight to your mind, and if not, like just dip back in your kind of memory history, the last week of something positive that happened. And I just want you to take 1 minute to describe that positive experience to your partner. So time yourself, please. You can take less, but don't take more than 1 minute. And then partner two, I ask you to listen and mirror back exactly what you just heard. So close to verbatim, no interruptions. Partner one, I just want you to listen. So that should just take you 2 minutes in total. Okay. So it's just a simple mirroring activity. And after that, 2 minutes, just continue to work in your pairs, and partner one, you can then start talking and just explain, open up about what is happening to you right now. What are your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your sensations? So you can share as little or as much as seems right to you. And take a couple of minutes to do that. Again, take less if you want, but don't take more than 2 minutes. So I'm just going to reiterate those things again. You're going to get together. You're going to say, I'm partner one, you're partner two. Partner one's going to describe a positive experience. Partner two is then going to mirror back as much as verbatim or as exactly as possible what you heard. There's no interpretations like, oh, I think that you meant this. It's just what you heard. So it's 1 minute of partner one sharing, 2 minutes of partner two mirroring back, and then a couple of minutes for partner one to explain how that made them feel. And then you're going to switch. Okay. So partner two, describe your positive experience. Partner one mirrors back. Partner two shares how that made them feel. And then we'll basically come back together into the main room and we'll have a chat. So I'm
Okay.
going to stop the screen share and ask if that makes sense to everyone and how everyone's feeling. A bit of a wrap up.
Karishma, where
Yay!
are
Bing, 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 bing.
you
Hi, everyone. I hate that bit where we just pull you out and you're like cut off halfway through. It's so unhuman, right? But you know what? Zoom haven't asked me to come and work with them yet. So look, we are almost at time, and I want to everyone honor everyone's time. I'm going to continue, if that's okay. I'm going to do a quick debrief on that activity and then just open up for Q&A. I'd love to just do a bit of a whole room share. I'll stop sharing so we can see each other, but like ask, how was that for you? Maybe a few of you could just open up on what your kind of thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions were that were coming up during the exercise. Please unmute yourselves, put your videos on, and let's just spend a couple of minutes telling everyone what it was for you.
I'm going to go first, Ollie, and say I think in our situation we actually had three, so that was a challenge in itself, but we dealt with it. But I certainly could hear that kind of the almost the passion and enthusiasm for the positivity of the experience. You could actually hear it in our voices. So that was one thing I noticed. So
That's really beautiful. Okay, thanks for sharing, Amanda. I love that positivity kind of just came through in an activity. Opening up to anyone else who wants to share how they felt and how that activity went for them.
Yeah, I'll go. So, like, initially, like, maybe I was hesitating a bit or not coming up with something concrete or what to share, wasn't sure. So, I ended up being the person to first. So, I got to listen in on what the other person had to say. And then, after hearing that, it automatically made me a little more comfortable to also talk about what I wanted to. So that's, I think, my main takeaway. And it was a nice little chat which I had, basically. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. It's
So it
often the
went
way,
well.
isn't it? When someone else, when you hear someone else or someone else participates first, it just brings your comfort level up a little bit. You can kind of settle in and you realize it's
Uh-huh.
not so bad, it's not so hard, I can have a go. So thank you for sharing, Darren. That's
Okay,
great.
cool. Thanks. Thanks. Okay.
Anyone else want to
Okay,
share? We've got, oh, yeah,
am I
go for
audible?
it,
Can I? Okay,
please.
so for my experience was it was actually my first time and pairing up with someone else which I don't know. And after like having the first chat and them recognizing affirming with us like we did something. So after that second part, we became more comfortable in sharing things. And the reaffirmation part, like I did something good, and the second person acknowledged it. That was very good for me. Like someone is hearing to me. So yeah,
Brilliant.
that was my experience.
Okay, that's lovely. I think it always feels quite weird, doesn't it, for you to mirror back what someone said, for you to repeat it verbatim. But I can tell you, it never feels weird to hear yourself what you've just said. Hear it from someone else. You feel, hopefully, you felt seen, heard, and validated. Ultimately, connection is the biggest opportunity you have to create impact. So, whether your organization or you personally in your work, your team, or even in your personal life are just trying to develop some trust, maybe you're trying to increase sales, maybe that's your target this quarter, maybe you're trying to build a world-class team, maybe you're going through some organizational change and transformation. Connection is the biggest opportunity because all those benefits it gives you. And I didn't even list things like greater productivity and greater kind of sense of belonging within a workplace, greater employee retention, and ultimately, right, which a lot of organizations understandably are ultimately looking for, their motivation is the bottom line. Okay, this increases the bottom line. Yes, it takes investment up front, it takes time, but it pays dividends. So connection starts with you. Thank you so much for being here, for feeling some of the love, the presence, the connection in the room. I really appreciate you all. It's been such a joy for me to share this work with you, and just to kind of immerse myself in it again. As I mentioned, we're going to be running another session probably in a month or so that's actually digging into using some of the methods, using some of the tools, how you apply it yourself within your teams, how you'll talk to your manager about starting some of this work. And we would love to see you all there. I'm going to just turn off the slide deck now and see if anyone has any questions for me, for Radhika, for anyone that you were in the breakout rooms. Like, this is your opportunity to talk, to connect.
Let's make this a bit more interesting, right? Let's think of let's say the first word we thought of in terms of feelings.
Okay.
I thought of aesthetic, like I feel very ecstatic, like very excited, or yeah, like I'm energized, That's a lot of words, but I'm sorry, didn't follow the rules.
No, it's nice. Ecstatic and energized. Okay. Who are you going to nominate?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. That's what I'm gonna do. Let's nominate Elaine.
Oh, hello. I haven't got a word. I was thinking warm, figuratively and literally. It's been really warm here in Singapore lately. And I mean, this session has been really warm. I didn't expect us to be talking to one another. I thought it's just going to be pretty passive. I'm just going to listen, but that was really fun. Oops, sorry, that's just one word. Okay, I'm going to nominate
Amanda, yeah.
Sure. I would say curious. Oh, curious, I'm even more curious. So thank you.
That's great. Who do you want to nominate?
Okay. How about Vedant?
Okay, thanks. If I would take away one thing, I guess it will not be one word, one sentence, which I can apply in any area of my life. It would be emphasize on connections. So that's what I would take as a one sentence from this session.
Back. I will end with I love, Elaine, that you used warm, because that's what I'm using as well. Very warm, physically, mentally. It's not that warm here. So like this is the session that's created that warmth for me. So thank you. And it's been a pleasure to meet you all. Okay.
Okay.
Can everyone do a little heart? Yeah. Nice.
Hey, everybody. 2, 3, go. Nice. Okay, great. I got it.
Cool. See you all soon. Take care.